Section 2.2, Properties of Water. So why is water necessary in living things? All cells are composed primarily of water. It makes up most of their cytoplasm, the liquidy part within the cell membrane. It helps give the cell structure. It's responsible for helping out in the transport of materials within organisms. Certain particles can dissolve in water and therefore be moved easier through cells and across cell membranes to other cells. And all processes necessary for life take place in water. Okay, the type of molecule that water is called a polar molecule. Polar in that it has an area on one side of it that is slightly positive, and the area on the other side of it that is slightly negative. This polarity, or these small charges on opposite sides of the cell, contribute to the unique properties that water has. Okay, so what a polar molecule is, like I said in the last slide, these areas of slight positive charges on this side and slight negative charges on this side. This comes from them sharing of electrons, but as you can see, this is a hydrogen, this is water, so hydrogen and oxygen. The electrons that are being shared are going to spend more time going around the oxygen, this bigger atom, than around the smaller hydrogens. As a result, electrons being negative, if you're spending more time going around the oxygen, we're going to get slightly negative charge on this end, and as a result, a slightly positive charge on the hydrogen end. And that comes from these sharing of the electrons unevenly. The differences between a nonpolar molecule and a polar molecule are that nonpolar molecules do not have charges because the electrons are shared equally. They're spending equal time going around both atoms, and as a result, you don't get these charges. The charges from polar molecules can form something called hydrogen bonds. Okay, so hydrogen bonds are formed in bipolar molecules. Okay, and nonpolar do not form these hydrogen bonds. We'll talk more about those later. Okay, so what is a hydrogen bond? Well, the small opposite charges of the two polar molecules form what's called a hydrogen bond. Again, looking at water, water is a great example of polarity. We have a slight positive charge on the hydrogen end and a slight negative charge on the oxygen end, and so these guys are going to have this small attraction. It's not a full bond. It's not like they're sharing electrons. It's not like they're transferring electrons. It's just an attraction. So this attraction between these oppositely charged sides usually comes from an oxygen or a nitrogen atom, holds them together, and as a result, it contributes to the unique characteristics that water has that other substances don't. Hydrogen bonds are also found in DNA. DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, carries a genetic code for living things, and its bases, the pairing in the middle, is held together by hydrogen bonds. Okay, hydrogen bonds by themselves are very weak. Atoms that are polar, such as water or DNA, have many hydrogen bonds, and as a result, the multiplicative effect of all these bonds make them pretty stable. Okay, the hydrogen bonds between water molecules are strong. Why? What's the result of this? Well, the hydrogen bond itself is not strong. It's a weak attraction, but if there are so many of them, it's going to make this a very strong or a very stable substance. It takes a lot of energy to overcome the attraction between water molecules, the hydrogen bonds, and so this is going to contribute to water's unique characteristics, which we're going to talk about in these upcoming slides. Okay, one of the important properties of water is ice floats. Well, why does it float, and how is this important for life? When water freezes, it forms a crystal. So it's one of the few substances that its solid form is less dense than its liquid form. And as a result, since it's less dense, water ice rises to the top of water. Looking here, the ice forms on the top of the lake or on top of the ocean or on top of the pond. This is important because it allows life to exist underneath. Okay, and this is one of the properties of water is that ice floats. Very important for living things. Another property that is very important for water is that it has a high specific heat. High specific heat means it takes a lot of energy to change water temp, okay? Because of the hydrogen bonds holding together to raise water temperature, it takes a lot of energy. To cool down water, it takes a lot of energy, okay? Water will stay about the same temperature for quite a long time if there's not energy added to it, and it's because of the hydrogen bonds holding it together. What this does is, or what this allows is, water can resist temperature changes. Okay, now remember your cells are mostly water, which is good since we want to maintain homeostasis. If the water can absorb temperature to keep our cells at roughly 98.6 degrees, that would be very, very helpful for maintaining homeostasis. Okay, it has to absorb a lot of heat to change temperature. And again, this contributes to cells maintaining homeostasis. Okay, next, what is cohesion? Well, one of the properties of water is that water molecules like to stick to each other because of the hydrogen bonds. They are attracted to one another and they stick together. This attraction among molecules of the same substance is called cohesion. Okay, an example is like when water beads up on a car, or you're holding a cup of water and you slightly turn it, the water stays together. It doesn't just like roll out. Like if there were marbles in there, it would stick together and come out in a flow. Okay, another property of water is called adhesion. So what is adhesion? Water molecules like to stick to other polar substances. Okay, the attraction among molecules of different substances is called adhesion. Cohesion, they're sticking to themselves. Adhesion, they're sticking to other stuff. A couple examples is a water meniscus. Here we have water in a test tube, and you can see that the water is actually being pulled up along the sides of the glass test tube because it's being attracted to that as well, and it forms this meniscus. This is mercury, which goes the other way. The meniscus goes down. Okay, water needs plants need to get water from their roots, which are down here, but we need to get water all the way up to the top. It would be very inefficient for the plant to pump water up, but since water sticks to itself as well as other stuff, the water is actually pulled from the roots all the way up to the top of the tree through this process called transpirational pull. Since the water sticks to each other, anytime water evaporates off the top of a plant, it's pulling water molecules all the way from under here up to the top of the plant to replace the water lost through transpiration. Okay, so why must many substances be dissolved in water in your cells? Molecules and ions must be dissolved before they can be part of a chemical process. Water is a great solvent. It dissolves polar substances relatively easy, as well as ionic substances relatively easy, and by getting dissolved in water as the solvent, they're easier passed through the cell to carry out cell chemical processes. Something that would be too large, okay, like sugar, would dissolve in water, and it's going to be easier to use for cellular processes. So, what is a solution? A solution is a mixture of two substances that is the same throughout. It's composed of two parts. The solvent, which is the thing that's going to do the dissolving. In living things, the solvent is often water. And the solute, the thing that's being dissolved in the water. An example of this would be coffee. You see here coffee. Okay, so you heat up the water. It runs through the coffee grounds. It dissolves some of the coffee grounds and makes coffee. Okay, other Solutions that you're very familiar with are like Gatorade or tea or anything like that, where it's mixed up, evenly distributed throughout. And since it's evenly distributed throughout, the solution is called a homogeneous solution. As mentioned on the previous slide, the two parts of a solution are the solute, the amount that gets, or the substance that gets dissolved, and it's going to be the lesser of the amount, the lesser material, and the solvent, which would be the thing that's doing the dissolving, and it's going to be the greater amount. Water is known as a universal solvent because it can dissolve so many things, and it's used in all living things as a solvent. The concentration of a solution would be measured by the amount of solute in the solvent, and that could be as a percent, or it could be by weight or by volume. And that's how you would know how much solute would be in the solvent making the solution. Okay, what types of molecules dissolve best in water and why? Well, water, remember, is a polar substance. So things that are going to dissolve very good in water would be other polar substances or ionic compounds. Remember, polar substances and ionic compounds both have charge. So, since water is charged, polar substances are charged, ionic compounds are charged, it's going to be easier for them to dissolve in water. The charges of the water molecules are attracted to their charge and help dissolve it. So here we're putting salt in water, dissolves very, very easily. Okay, this would be a sugar cube in water. Will it dissolve as well? Yes, it will, but you'll probably have to put a little bit more effort to get things stirred up. That's because salt is ionic and sugar is not. What types of molecules rarely dissolve in water? Non-polar molecules don't dissolve in water. They don't have charged regions, so they're not going to be attracted to the water molecules. The water molecules are not going to be attracted to them. So things like oil, lipids, fats, those things will not dissolve in water very well. They don't have these charged regions to attract water. They're not attracted to water. Water's not attracted to them. They're not going to mix. Okay, so you can see when we put oil in water here, it just floats on top. It'll form droplets if you put it in a little bit. Form droplets, they'll stay together as well. What is an acid and what is the pH scale? Certain compounds, when they're put in water, break apart into ions. These solutions break into hydroxide and hydrogen ions. Hydroxide is OH minus, so it's a negative ion, and hydrogen ions, H plus, or a positive ion. Acids have a higher concentration of hydrogen ions than hydroxide. This high or higher concentration of hydrogen ions would put them on the pH scale below 7. Okay, so on the pH scale, which is the scale that measures acidity or alkalinity, how strongly acidic or strongly basic a substance is, 7 is neutral. Then as we go this way, these things are more acidic. So 6 right here would be a weak acid. We're down this way. This would be a strong acid. A weak acid would have much less hydrogen ions in the solution than a strong acid down here. Okay, at neutral, the hydrogen ion concentration and the hydroxide ion concentration is equal. So what is the base and what is the pH scale for bases? Bases remove hydrogen ions from a solution, so they have a much lower hydrogen ion concentration, and as a result their pH is going to be above 7. So again, 7 being neutral, right? Hydrogen ion concentration and hydroxide ion concentration is equal here. And as you go to the right up the scale for 8, 9, 10, and whatnot, things get more basic or more alkaline because they have a way lower concentration of hydrogen ions. Okay, so these would be said to be a weak base, like around 8-ish, and going this way, these would be stronger bases or more strongly alkaline. Okay, what does it mean to say a solution is neutral? A solution is neutral when it's neither acidic or basic. Like I mentioned before, using a pH scale, when there's an equal number of hydroxide ions and hydrogen ions. Neutral solutions are pH 7. Okay, so it's neither alkaline nor acidic, it's neutral. pH 7, equal number of hydroxide and hydrogen ions. Okay, so what are buffers and why are they necessary? Organisms must maintain tightly controlled pH levels. If the pH levels fluctuate too much, it can cause death in the worst case scenario. Buffers help return pH levels to normal for whatever part of the organism that the pH is changing in. For example, when we take in food, the saliva in your mouth has a pH between 6.5 and 7.5 pH. Mouth stays in your food for maybe up to a minute. Okay, as it passes down from your mouth, your esophagus to your stomach. Okay, the upper stomach is going to have a pH around 4 to 6.5. Okay, because there are digestive juices, acids that help break down the food in your stomach. As it gets lower into your stomach, the pH goes lower as well, but it's much more acidic. This food's going to maybe spend 1 to 3 hours in there. Then it passes into the duodenum, or the first part of the small intestine. Now the pH needs to go to 7, so it's getting much less acidic, neutral, slightly basic. Your liver, specifically your gallbladder in your liver, is going to dump bile salts or bile into your duodenum to help neutralize the acid of the food that left your stomach and get it back up to this pH, which would be correct for the intestine. Okay, and then it goes to the small intestine and maybe gets a little bit more acidic, between 4 and 7, large intestine between 4 and 7, and so on. But we have these buffers to get your pH back to a normal level. Okay, and what buffers do is they counteract the effects of strong acids and bases, and they keep pH in a normal functioning range.